Welcome to BID. This is the place where we just dive into the success of Black innovators. This is where we focus on the legacy that has started way back and that we are continuing now. So, the people that we cover in this podcast and in this episode are people that have and are continuing to make a lasting impact on our society, in the country, and in the world. So, in this episode, I'm actually really excited about this one. We're going to be talking about something that I personally love: food. So, we have a couple of innovators here. And just starting off, we have Mr. James Hemings. Then we're going to Lloyd Hall. And last but not least, we're going to discuss George Washington Carver and all of his inventions. So we're going straight into James Hemings. Now, James Hemings was known for popularizing the French cuisine in America. So the French style vanilla ice cream, macaroni and cheese, and French fries, and other dishes as well that he took from France and brought it to America. So starting off, he's the one that was actually cooking the dishes, and he's the one that made them known. So we're going to go back a little far for him. He was born in 1765 in Virginia. Now, he was born into slavery. Mr. Hemings' father, his name was John, and he was a slave trader. John had a daughter. John's daughter, Martha, married Thomas Jefferson. Yes, the Thomas Jefferson that was the future U.S. president and the American founding father. So after John's passing is when James Hemings became the slave of Martha and Thomas Jefferson. So we're not going to go too much into that, but we're not going to go too much into like the family tree and all that, but Mr. Hemings ended up on Thomas Jefferson's Monticello plantation. Now that he's on this plantation, him and his brother as well, we'll talk a little bit about his brother later, but they basically served as personal attendants to Jefferson and his family. So during wartime, he would help them stay safe, as well as a multitude of other chores in and outside of the house. So fast forward to when James is 19 in 1784, Thomas Jefferson takes a trip to Europe. And he ends up bringing James, and he wants to train James to be a cook, a French cook specifically. So James was trained there in Paris as a French cook. It was there where he was hired, and he ended up working and learning the art of fine dining and just cooking high quality style dishes that they had at this time. So in 1787, he became the head cook at the Paris townhouse. So he's preparing dishes for international guests, the scientists, the authors, the European aristocrats at that time. He's preparing dishes for the people that are considered very high up. So, long story short, he's becoming a pretty I don't know if he was pretty well known, but definitely respected, I can imagine, in the kitchen, um, with the skills that he's learning and the training that he's received. So after he's learned this art of fine dining, he's also picking up the language of French, so he's becoming fluent in the language of French language. Um, but later on, James Hemings and his sister, he has a sister named Sally, they return back to the U.S. in 1789 as Jefferson's enslaved property at Monticello. So he was there for a few years in Europe and had this experience of just learning a lot of different things. I'm not sure how that relationship between him and Jefferson was at this time, but returning to Monticello, he ended up organizing his first American kitchen in New York. Now, he's still Jefferson's enslaved property at this time. Jefferson is the Secretary of State in New York. So that's where he is establishing his first American kitchen and organizing it. Not just organizing, like boxes or something like that. No, he's actually running the kitchen. James Hemings becomes the boss of this business, and he's ordering the materials, the ingredients that is needed. He's cooking, and I can imagine that he's also teaching others how to cook and just training them in the skills that he's received in Europe. So he's once again preparing for high level individuals. He's preparing for the president, European diplomats, congressmen, international and national visitors. Anyways, fast forward, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison end up going on a trip to New York. And during this trip, Hemings he's having a different experience. He's seeing different things, he's seeing different people, and he's seeing how free, successful Black people are living. And as you can imagine at this time, that's very impactful on him. A Black man in America that is enslaved, that kind of has this sense to do certain things, like, be in charge of his own kitchen, but at the end of the day, doesn't have full control over his body, where he can go, what he can do, when he can do it. He sees other people that look like him being free and having control over, basically having autonomy, and being successful. So he ends up having some type of conversation with Jefferson, and he basically ends up coming to an agreement with Jefferson, where he writes a manumission agreement, which is basically an agreement to release someone from slavery. So this happens in roughly September of 1793, and Jefferson agrees to free him if he went back to Monticello and trained his replacement. So his replacement was actually someone of Jefferson's choice, which was his brother, James' brother. So he ended up going back to Monticello Plantation and training his brother to take his place so that he could become a free man in America. Now, this actually happened. 3 years later, Jefferson wrote a document discharging Hemings from being a slave, and he became free from bondage. Now, that was 3 years later, so it did take a substantial amount of time. But once he was free, he ended up actually working in a tavern. He actually ended up traveling as well. There are records of him traveling to different places, so he didn't just stay in the U.S. the whole time. He actually traveled. Now, James Heming played a pivotal role in blending different cuisines, the Virginian style recipes, the French style recipes, and it ended up creating an American culture, an American cuisine that we still have today, that we still enjoy today. So he didn't just create the cuisine and be like, yeah, I'm gonna keep this for myself. Like, he actually went and taught others his skills. Aside from his brother, he taught others that he encountered the skills, the techniques, and just shared his knowledge overall. Now, I feel like a part of the reason why the things that he made became popular were because he was cooking for people that were in high level positions, people that had the influence. I actually watched this video while I was doing some research about him. I watched this video of someone trying to kind of recreate the dishes that he made and trying to recreate it in the same way that he did. Now, one of the dishes that we were making were macaroni pie, or that's what they called it back then. So it wasn't macaroni and cheese, they called it macaroni pie. And then they had the French fries, of course, which was called the pommes frites. And he also ended up making creme brulee in America. So that was one of the dishes that he took from Europe and made it here, and it became popular in America. So a lot of these foods that we have that we consider American food is food that was taken from France and mixed in with the culture that was popular at that time. Um, and that became part of American culture, part of American cuisine. And it's something that we still enjoy to this day. And I think it's cool that James Hemings played a major part in that. So thank you, literally. The next inventor that we are going to be talking about, Mr. Lloyd Hall. So, Mr. Lloyd Hall is credited for food preservation improvements. So, we're going to just jump straight in. Hall was known as an American chemist, and he was specifically known for innovating the many food preservation practices that we use today. So, starting off in his life, he was born in Illinois in 1894. Mr. Hall was a great student in high school. He was the captain of his high school speech and debate team. He was athletic. He didn't just play football, he played baseball and ran track as well. So, going into his later education, he went to Northwestern University in Chicago, and that's where he earned his bachelor's in pharmaceutical chemistry in 1914. And he also ended up earning his master's in 1916, a couple years later. So he also earned his doctorate degree as well a couple decades later, but that was later. So right after he got his degree, he started working. He worked as a junior and senior chemist of Chicago's Department of Health, and he stayed there for approximately 4 years. So after that job, he ended up moving to a second job where he was the chief chemist at John Morrell Company, which was a business that specialized in meat processing. He worked at this job at John Morrell Company for about 2 years, and then he started working for Griffith Laboratories. Now, this company is a food processing company, and this is where he applied the knowledge that he gained at his previous jobs. So, with his knowledge from the meat processing company, now moving into the food processing company, this is where Hall worked on exploring the science of preserving meat. And as you'll learn later, if you don't already know, he explored a lot. I mean, a lot. So, at this time, meat preservation was done with salts. So, a major issue that was being ran into was trying to keep the flavor in the food without actually allowing it to spoil. So, Mr. Hall actually wanted to invent a better process to prevent the spoiling of the food, but also being able to keep the flavor in the food. So, after many attempts, he ended up finding a combination of salt with tiny crystals of sodium nitrite and nitrate. I'm probably saying, I'm not even saying that right. I am not a chemistry major, but he ended up finding the right combination of the different chemicals or different components that was needed to mix with the tiny crystals. So after many attempts, he ended up finding the right combination of salt with tiny crystals of sodium nitrite and nitrate. With this right combination, he ended up patenting this process in 1932. Now, this process that he created actually suppressed the nitrogen, which was causing the food to spoil. So, before all of this, like he didn't just straight jump in and just succeed. No, he failed many times. And there were many instances where, crazy things were happening. I just want to make a point that he did not succeed without failures. And not just one or two, multiple failures, but he was not able to succeed without the failures. Now, he didn't just patent this one process. He also patented another process called vacuum sterilization. So, in food science, vacuum is when you just remove the air from the package or the container in order to slow the growth of the microorganisms. So, this process was actually applied in different areas after this. So, it was applied into drugs, it was applied into hospital supplies, as well as other areas. So, this was a major achievement for him, as well as the discovery of the impact that seasonings have on food preservation. So, people thought at this time that certain seasonings or just seasonings in general would help preserve meat. Well, Dr. Hall found that ginger and cloves and other seasonings actually increase the rate of mold and bacterial growth. So, just by him discovering the impact of seasonings allowed him to contribute to the process of food preservation. Now, I think this is just fascinating. So, Dr. Hall, yes, he patented the process or the combination of the different salts and the other different chemicals, the vacuum sterilization process. He actually had over 100 US and foreign patents in food chemistry. Like, that's actually mind-boggling to think about. That not only did he have over 100 patents in the US and foreign places, but they're all in food chemistry. Like, he actually had 100 new ideas or new ways to do things or better ways to do things, all around food. Like, that's amazing. So, moving on, later in his life, after he retired in 1959 from Griffith, he served as a consultant to Food and Agricultural Organization of United Nations. And he also was appointed to the American Food for Peace Council by President John F. Kennedy. And this is where he oversaw food donations. Now, I really do think that it's great that President John F. Kennedy acknowledged the contributions of Lloyd Hall in food science, food preservation, and just the contributions that he offered the country in general. So I think that's really amazing, and I think that it's worth not just celebrating, but acknowledging and making sure that we're spreading this knowledge to others. Now, I do want to note that while this food preservation that Lloyd Hall was doing was in the early 1900s, of course, as time goes on, new discoveries come out, and the preservation has changed over time. Although we still do use the process that he has in a lot of different areas, we do understand now, or scientists have a better understanding of the health benefits and then lack thereof for certain things. So things have been modified over time, but long story short, we are glad and grateful for his contributions that he's made to the food process and food in general. All right. So here we are, man. Here we are. We are about to talk about Mr. Nah, I can't even say his name. We're about to talk about the man that was talked about in different households. It doesn't matter the race, gender. He was talked about in different households for his great success with one thing that people often remember. But although he had great success with multiple different things, but it's often one thing that people know him for: peanuts. George Washington Carver. This is the man that's credited for agriculture and science inventions, more specifically promoting alternative crops to cotton and methods to prevent soil depletion. He is also known as the revolutionary American agricultural chemist. He developed over 300 uses for the peanut, as well as over 100 uses for sweet potatoes. So, I mean, man, let's get in. So, he was born in Missouri around the time that slavery was abolished in the U.S. So it's a tricky time right now, um, as many people are still enslaved, but he has a brother. But other than that, he does not have any family. He was essentially alone by himself at the plantation, aside for the slave owners. George ended up actually staying at the plantation after slavery was abolished, and he ended up leaving the plantation at 11 years old to attend school in Missouri. And if you want to find out what sources I'm using to research, check out those sources on the link tree provided below in the bio. So he left at age 11 to attend school in Missouri, and he later attended school in Minneapolis, Kansas, where he also received his high school diploma. So in the late 1880s is when George Washington Carver attended Simpson College in Iowa in music and art. Now, he ended up going there, but he did transfer to Iowa State Agricultural School, which is now known as Iowa State University, to get his bachelor's as well as his master's. Now, the reason why, or part of the reason why he switched or transferred, is because he was encouraged by a professor to transfer for agricultural studies once he discovered and started to speak more about his true interests working with plants and animals. Now, growing up, before being known as the Peanut Man, he was known as the plant doctor. He knew how to nurse plants back to health. And that's part of the reason why he decided to go to Iowa State Agricultural School. Now, right at the start of his career, after getting his master's in 1896, George Washington Carver was offered the position of a teacher in Tuskegee Institute in Alabama by Booker T. Washington. So he ended up going to the school and making a lot of connections with the students and becoming a great asset to the students that were there at that time. Now, he wasn't just a teacher in a classroom setting. He actually created something called the Jessup Wagon, which was a mobile classroom. And with that, he traveled around and showed people his scientific discoveries that he had created with soil. And his purpose wasn't just to be like, hey, look at my inventions, I'm cool. Like, no. His purpose was to educate the formerly enslaved population on farming with the intent of becoming self-sufficient. He literally had a goal of making generational change, generational wealth, generational improvements. One thing that he actually how to introduce to a lot of people or popularized was the idea of crop rotation. So this was not something that he was not the first person to do this or to mention this, but it was something that he popularized by sharing with a multitude of people. So basically, this crop rotation idea is only planting certain plants for 1 year, then the next year planting another certain plant. Now, we're not going to get too specific, but he initially encouraged farmers to rotate their crops to conserve the nutrients in the soil. And that was the purpose of crop rotation. So he encouraged them to give up the cotton crops because the cotton took up so much nutrients like nitrogen from the soil. And he encouraged them to plant peanuts to put some of the nutrients back into the soil, as well as sweet potatoes and other different plants. So with this system that he was creating or that he was informing people of, actually allowed others to have a sense of stability when farming so that they weren't making money 1 year, but the next year their sources depleted. What that did was actually help transform the stagnant agricultural economy of the South, which was after the American Civil War. So that's that's a lot that he's already done, and we haven't even gotten to the accomplishment that a lot of people know him for, which is the peanut. So he created over 300 uses for the peanut. Now, some of them that I can't even sit here and read all of them, but some of them are shampoo, lotion, medicine, milk, dyes, soap, and that's just naming a few. There's actually a whole list of different inventions that he created or different things that he used the peanut for. So he also had over 100 uses for the sweet potato, and we can start listing those. We got the flour, different beverages, medicine, food ingredients, paint. I mean, he was literally just in that room creating, whipping up everything that he could think of. So, but I think this is interesting. When I was researching, I found out a little bit more about George Washington that I feel like whenever I hear about him, you don't really hear much about this side of him. So he wasn't just, a planter, agricultural centered man, but he actually was a painter. He liked to crochet, and he was a musician. So he actually had multiple different interests between the planting, between the science, the painting, the crocheting, the playing the piano. I mean, this man, George Washington Carver, a man with many talents. Now, just to summarize the major impact that George Washington Carver had on America, on society, he was a major role model in the Black community for young African American scientists who were following in his footsteps. His desire to not only change his life, but to also change the lives of those around him and those that were to come, resulted in creating a legacy of self-sufficient individuals and offering continual improvements and inventions and just creative ways of creating different things to society. Now, with those three innovators that we covered, I mean, James Hemings, Lloyd Hall, and George Washington Carver, those are three men that have made lasting impacts, lasting contributions to the foods that we eat today, to what sits on our table, you know? Um, and I think that's amazing. And I think it's important to know about them, to learn them. So go ahead and check out the link tree again and just look at the resources that I've linked or search them up. Watch a YouTube video. Like, researching and learning about Black history or just history in general doesn't have to be time consuming or long or sitting down and reading a textbook. You can pull up a YouTube video and watch a 5-minute, 10-minute, 2-minute video and just learn about someone from history that has created something that you enjoy today, or something that keeps you safe, something that allows you to experience something different. So I would just encourage you to go ahead, watch a quick video, Google somebody's name, Google an invention, learn more about the world that we live in, and learn about the people that have contributed to it. And yeah, of course, like I said before, there's like resources that I've used that are linked in to that link tree, and you can also go and do your own research. But thank you guys for joining for another episode of the BID podcast. I'm so glad that you listened to this, and I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something while listening to this. And don't forget to subscribe. Let me know if you have any suggestions. Thank you for joining and listening to the legacies of Black innovators. I'll see you on the next one.